Welcome to the SLC. This week, we will be talking about sprinting for lacrosse players. Two main things when we're talking about when we're sprinting. We're going to talk about acceleration and we're going to talk about max speed or max velocity or top end speed. We want to make sure that we're hitting those at least twice a week. We can have an acceleration day and then we can max velocity day. And it depends on where you're at and what your practices are or what you're doing for the week and how you want to structure those things. But usually we want to make sure that we are setting those up to be separated by at least 48 hours. 72 if it is a really, really big day and we're talking about max velocity, because that can be really, really taxing on the central nervous system or your CNS. And we want to make sure that it is fully recovered before we're going back out and hitting another hard sprint day. A general rule of thumb is for about every 10 yards that we run, we want to make sure that we rest 1 minute. If we're at 30 yards, we want to make sure that we rest for 3 minutes. Why we do this is because it is so taxing on our CNS, our central nervous system, that we want to make sure that we are fully recovered and that we are getting out max effort into the sprint. If you are breathing heavy going into your next rep, you are now basically conditioning, and that is not speed training. We don't want to be breathing heavy going into our next rep. We don't want to even sit there and be like, oh man, I should have rested just a little bit longer. We want to make sure that we are fully recovered so that we can give max effort. If you want to run fast, you got to run fast. And you being a little bit of fatigue or breathing heavy is not allowing you to do that and maximize the overall results that you're going to get from sprinting. Now, we'll go over acceleration first. When we're talking about acceleration, I'm going to tell you that acceleration is probably going to be within 10, 20 to 30 yards. 30 yards is going to be probably the most. Some people will probably hit some top end speed if you're undertrained or not trained enough. You're going to hit your top end speed probably a little bit faster. And so I would tell you to stay at the shorter end of those acceleration ranges around that 10, 15 yards. But if you are well trained or you have a lot more training years underneath you, you might be able to hit a top end speed a little bit later and hopefully it's past 30 yards. But right now, I would tell you that acceleration is going to happen within 10 to 30 yards. And so with that, you can play with acceleration and different ways of coming out of that acceleration. But messing with the acceleration and the different kinds of planes that you can come in and out of is always beneficial just because you never know what sport is going to give you. And so when we're talking about acceleration, I would tell you to try all of it. And it doesn't mean you have to try all of it in one session. Maybe you are just working on getting better at pushing out and starting off the blocks or out of a stagnant position. And then as you get used to that, then we can start adding maybe like a half kneeling. You can do a half kneeling going forward. We can do a half kneeling coming out laterally and pushing off and getting into acceleration. There are multiple things that you can do, but right now I would say master the technique of getting out and getting acceleration into good shin angles. We want a good positive shin angle. The more vertical the shin angle is and I'm pushing into the ground, I'm going to stand up. But if I can get into a positive shin angle, right? If I can get my shin out in front of me with a good posture here as I push, that will push me forward. And that's what we're looking for in acceleration, is we're looking for positive shin angles, a good back angle to match that shin angle, right? And trying to come out in more of a horizontal fashion. When we're talking about top end speed or max velocity, what I would tell field sport athletes, lacrosse players, is we should work on flying 10s, flying 20s, flying 30s, in outs or float, sprint, float. Those are the things that are going to mimic closer to the game. Is we're never really stagnant like track athletes where we're coming out of a block. And I'm not saying that that's bad by any means. And you can definitely work on sprinting that way as well. And that can also get you very, very fast. But if you want to try to mimic the game as close as possible, you're usually moving all the time. Plays are happening, you're coming out, there's a ground ball, and all of a sudden you are picking up the ground ball and you're already moving and you're trying to navigate situations, attackmen coming at you, middies trying to get the ball, cause a turnover. So you might have to navigate that, and then you'll finally open up and see green, and then maybe you need to push transition. And so with that, you are kind of moving in a slow manner and you're jogging, trying to evade. And then as you find open space, then you can go, right? And so that's why I would suggest using flying 10s, 20s, and 30s, or floats, sprint float, to help you with that process. And as you're first getting into it, I would ease into those and not sprint from a dead stop trying to hit max velocity. I would incorporate more float sprint floats or flying 10s, 20s, and 30s as you are getting into sprinting and trying to build your capacity so that you can sprint for greater distances and speed. What I would tell you to do if you're starting out, start with shorter max distance sprints for velocity. I would say start at 10 yards. I can run 10 yards and build up speed, and then once I hit my 10-yard marker, I can max sprint for 10 yards. If you need to take longer than that, that's fine. If you need to take 20 yards building up into it, that's fine, do that. But I would tell you to start out with a shorter distance and fewer reps to start out. And then those are things that we can build on, right? We can build volume. We can build intensity by sprinting at a max velocity for longer distances. But right now, starting out, the best way to do it, start with short distance buildups, short amount of sprints, and then build from there. But Terrell, it didn't even look like you ran fast. Hopefully you're faster than me, so there's that. Something that you can also add to your sprinting regimen is also jumps or plyometrics. And with that, when we're jumping or we're introducing plyos, same concept as acceleration, we are trying to put it in that same vector that allows us to get out horizontally. And so when we push and we jump, we want to make sure that we're working on broad jumps or leaps. If you want to call them jumps or leaps, up to you. You can work on bounding. You can work on hops. You can also do those from a kneeling position. You can do them from a standing position. You can walk into it and run and then get into bounding. And I will show you some of those. And so those things are some things that you can add to your regimen or your training block that can also help you with acceleration and putting force into the ground rapidly and trying to propel yourself out into a horizontal fashion.